Hello and welcome back to Bitesize Boxing. So today we're going to be talking about Anthony Joshua, an interesting kind of subject, and I'm going to kind of freestyle off the top of my head here because there's a few things I want to talk about with regards to Anthony Joshua. What are his next steps? Where has he been? What happens next? Where is he in his career relative to the peaks? And I want to go over all those kind of things. Also, just before I start, I want to say, of course, there will be Canelo Crawford content coming probably late this week, early next week. It's one of those things, I don't really want to long it out. There doesn't really seem to be any point. I will talk about the fight as of when we get closer to it. But I'll be honest, it's a strange fight to me. It's not one of those that I was really clamouring for as like a hardcore boxing fan. So I haven't got, really strong thoughts on it in the way that a lot of people might. It's one of those that I can... especially based on recent performances, especially from Canelo. So, yeah. But anyway, let's talk about Anthony Joshua. So, Anthony Joshua is in a very weird spot in his career. Of course, the last time we saw him, he was getting splattered all around Wembley in 5 rounds by Daniel Dubois in what was a brutal beatdown. The only limited success he really had in that fight came in the closing seconds of that fight, ironically, when he caught Daniel Dubois with a good right hand. And then as he stepped in himself to unload on Dubois, he left himself wide open for, I think it was a right hook, wasn't it? Clean on the jaw, and he was out. In that fight, he'd been down multiple times, he'd been hurt multiple times. It was definitely the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Decisive beatdown since he'd faced Ruiz. Of course, he had lost back-to-back against Usyk, but those fights were, although clear on the scorecards to me, they were more nip and tuck. There was success for Anthony Joshua in those fights. He wasn't getting absolutely banjoed all around the ring like he was in that Dubois fight. In that Dubois fight, he tried to fight a gunslinger by being reckless, and again, Daniel Dubois is a fighter that, as I've said previously, if he can land shots on you, he doesn't lose confidence, even if you're landing shots on him. And for that, Anthony Joshua, he was able to land on Dubois, and he was, having some success at some points, but it was nowhere near enough to deter Dubois. At the end of the day, if it's a case of who lands first and who has the better chin, it turned out to be Daniel Dubois. So it's one of those ones where it's strange because it now leaves Anthony Joshua in a very strange spot. Is he completely done? Is he washed? I think mentally he's looked fragile really since the Ruiz fights. There has definitely been fragilities there. Even I go back to that Pulev fight. If you go back and watch that, there were openings for Joshua where you would have thought Joshua of a few years before would have got rid of Pulev in probably 3 or 4 rounds, at least that version of Pulev. I'm not saying prime Pulev. That version of Pulev probably he would have got rid of in, let's just say, 3 or 4 rounds. But in that fight, he was playing with his food. Pulev was leaving openings for Joshua, and you could see Joshua was far too hesitant to actually take the initiative and take him out. And in the end, how many rounds did that go? Let me just check. Was it 9? It's 9 rounds. So I thought it went 7 actually. So yeah, 9 rounds really. And again, that's a fight that Joshua was just playing with his food, and he could have got him out there a lot earlier, but he just didn't have the confidence to put his shots together. And that has been really the whole story of Anthony Joshua's career really, is that as good as he is physically, and look, there are physical limitations to Joshua. The stamina isn't the best. He does gas out. He's a very muscle-bound heavyweight. He is a little bit stiff. I don't think he's as stiff as some people try and make out, but he's a little bit stiff. He's a bit upright and that kind of thing. He hasn't got the best powers of recovery. We know Joshua's flaws by this point. That being said, he has got strengths. He is a world-class heavyweight at his best, but it is more mental that Joshua struggles, and not in the way that someone like Dubois struggles. For me, Daniel Dubois has more innate confidence than Joshua, but Dubois has less heart, if I'm honest, whereas Joshua, I don't think, lacks the heart, but he hasn't got the confidence. Do you see what I mean? It's a weird one in that regard. I think if Dubois had been in the same position as Joshua in their fight, Dubois would have quit rather than get knocked out, whereas Anthony Joshua was willing to throw caution into the wind and get knocked out. That's the difference in their mentalities. However, you could see as soon as Joshua got hit early on, I think it was the first round, he had that panic look in the eyes. He has those whites of his eyes that he's like that, and he's got a terrible poker face. He looks nervous, whereas Dubois, when he got hit, he didn't really care. Again, that's the difference in the conflations in their personalities. So Joshua mentally, for me, is somebody who never really recovered from those Ruiz fights. And a lot of people, myself included, watching that Ruiz fight live, there felt like there was something off with Joshua that night. Not to make any excuses for him or to take any credit away from Ruiz, because it was a fantastic fight, and it was a really, really good performance by Ruiz in that first fight. But there was something strange, and they had this weird kind of vibe. And vibe isn't the right word, but you know what I mean. As they were walking into the ring, I remember being in a boxing group chat, and the amount of people who were saying, I can't describe it, but Joshua is going to lose this fight. I can't describe it. Even now, I'm getting like goosebumps just thinking about it. It's weird. There was this weird thing in the air. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes you just get that with fights. And as Joshua walked to the ring, he was doing that weird thing where he's chewing his gum shield. And again, he looked really nervous. It does make you wonder if Joshua knew something we didn't going into that fight. There have been rumours that he'd been knocked out by Joey Javeco in sparring just a couple of weeks prior. That was what the rumour mill was at the time, but maybe that was the case, maybe that wasn't. But again, Joshua struggles with confidence. This is the point I'm trying to get at. And he's never really mentally recovered. And after that Dino Dubois fight, how is he going to be mentally? I mean, physically, he's been out for a year now, and he's apparently going to be out until early next year, sort of February, January next year. So he's going to be out for 18 months by the time he fights again. And so the body is breaking down. I think we can now say that, maybe not as bad as some fighters, but clearly the fact he's just had to take 18 months out and have surgery, the body is breaking down. Mentally, he's not looked on it for a while now. And another word to the body, I think another reason that Joshua's body has broken down is that, and I think this comes into the confidence thing, right, is that Joshua would have these ridiculously long training camps. I don't know how many of you guys clock this, but if an Anthony Joshua fight got announced, the fight wouldn't happen for sometimes 3 or 4 months. The guy was having, and when you watch his training on, say, Instagram or whatever else on his social media, this guy was having camps as soon as the fights were announced. He was having 4-month training camps and this kind of thing, which for a heavyweight, for a 250, 260 pound, 6'6" man, is just unnecessary. I'm not obviously saying Dave Allen is the blueprint here, but you look at like a Dave Allen fight camp, he'll tell you, he'll do like 5-week training camps, 4-week training camps. Now, of course, he is not the model because he doesn't take his health anywhere near as seriously as he should, and his conditioning. But what I'm trying to get at is that Anthony Joshua has this kind of reputation for having these ridiculously long training camps where he has to train his body, he has to train his mind, he has to get himself in the right mind frame. Anthony Joshua is not one of these fighters that tends to have, 4-6 week turnaround in fights. He just doesn't. So the fact, again, that he has to have these long camps kind of plays into this sort of mentality issue that I think he has. So really and truly, when the body ostensibly is breaking down, as we're seeing now, he's having to take time out to recuperate. And this is a guy who's not recovered from knockout defeats at all well in the past. When he's just suffered the most devastating knockout defeat of his career and he's having injury issues, I don't think it bodes well. And one thing as well that I haven't heard enough people talk about, Anthony Joshua is 37 next year. Yeah, you heard that right. Anthony Joshua is 37 next year. This is a guy who is aging quite quick. He's older than a lot of people think. And so, a lot of people, when you talk to them about Anthony Joshua, they'll go, oh, he's like what? He's like 33, maybe turning 34 next year. No, he's 37 next year. So I don't think Anthony Joshua really has much of anything left. But I'd be interested to know what you guys think, because it's a strange one. We haven't heard much from him, really. He's been very quiet since the Dubois loss. I don't really know what to expect when we do see him in the ring again. Will we finally see that Tyson Fury fight? For me, it's one of those that if we see it, I could care less. I don't really care one way or the other. I'm like, they're both going to be so far removed from their prime by the time it does happen that I'm not really that bothered at this point. And I think one thing that really gives context to this is the first time I ever spoke to somebody about this fight, about Joshua Fury, I was in sixth form, and it was me and a couple of my mates debating it, right? I'm now nearly 30 and I'm married. So this has been a fight that we've been talking about for what? 12, 14 years? Something like that, 12, 13, 14 years. That's how long we've known about these two fighters. This is when Joshua was on the come up and in the amateurs and in the Olympics, and Fury was on the come up on like Channel 5. And this is when we first started linking these two guys together, and they've been sparring. I mean, as I say, it's one of those now that if it does happen, yeah, it'll be cool to see, but it won't really be a reflection of what the fight really should have been. But I don't know. You let me know what you think. What do you think about Joshua's career? Who do you think he should fight as well as a comeback? Because when it comes to sort of relatively soft punching, safe people to fight, he obviously fought Jermaine Franklin and Otto Wallin, which are two good shouts on that front. But he's kind of exhausted his, you know, perennial kind of sort of top 30 kind of fighters who don't punch that hard. I mean, who else is there now? So who can he come back against? I'd be interested to know what you guys think. And yeah, as I say, not really a structured video today. Just wanted to sort of freestyle and sort of say what was on my mind regarding this. But yeah, you let me know what you think, and I'd be interested to know. Take it easy, guys. Cheers.